What's up, guys? Welcome back to True Sound Studios. I'm Weezna, and today I'm going to show you guys how I wired up the studio. So you're not going to see me like drill holes and aimlessly pull wires through the wall. Like, I don't think that's very exciting to watch. But what I do show you is, where I wired everything, the reason why I put things in certain spots, how things are broken up into different circuits and for what purpose, and then show you where I ran microphone cables and also cables to kind of future-proof your studio in case your situation ever changes. Like for me, I'm always just doing mixing and mastering in here. That's what I'm intending on it. That's what I built the studio for. But just in case in the future, if I ever decide to start recording, at least I can do that without having to drastically change the studio. So anyways, with that being said, here is me wiring up the brand new studio. Okay, so now I have essentially finished the framing and have moved on to wiring. So I did the power wiring. I did one circuit of 20 amp receptacles, and those are really just dedicated to studio gear. So if it has to deal with audio, it's going to be plugged into that circuit. There is a separate circuit for all of the lighting and what I call like the non-essential electronics. And that would just be like, I do have an Alexa and I have our internet router. That's really the only things. But I like to separate the lighting circuit from like the gear circuit, just in case there's any interference. You can, at least it's a possibility that you won't have any issues. So also ran a few snake cables through the wall, some Cat 6 speaker wire, things like that. So let me show you guys at least where I've gotten to as of right now. I'm gonna start with the switches in here. So I'd like to split things up as much as possible. I'm gonna have some down lighting on the side walls. I'm gonna have like baseboard lighting at the very bottom. The whole front wall is gonna be lit up. They're gonna be like these triangles. I'm gonna have some additional lighting in the front, lighting up some gear. I got like spotlights for the studio desk. I have lighting in the back. So there's a lot of different lighting, we'll call them sections. And yeah, most of the time I just pretty much turn them all on, but for filming purposes or whatever I might be doing, sometimes it's nice to be able to turn things on and off. So that's the reason why I have two double gang boxes. So I can have, 4 switches in here, but this one is a double switch. So technically I have 5 different lighting circuits. These main lights, which is here, are these 5 4-inch. They're actually 16 color full. You can change the whole white spectrum and they can do the full 16 color range. So that's this switch here. Then I have some filming lights. So when I'm filming, I'm sitting at the mixing console. I always have a camera on me, always set up, and it's just nice to just be able to easily turn some white lights on and off. And so that's what I have, these 2 larger 6-inch, not smart lights at all. They just do one color. And that's this switch. And then these last 3 are gonna take care of the side wall and front wall lighting. And I'll be able to turn them on and off, as I choose. Now, yes, I could have just done another single gang box, but I like things to be symmetrical, so I kind of ended up doing like this. Now, all these switches is all for the lighting circuit. These are all on its own dedicated circuit. So this is a 15 amp dedicated circuit for lighting only. It also does pick up the router in the Amazon Alexa. So I'll have a different color wall plate on that one outlet that'll be for that other thing so that you don't accidentally plug studio gear into it. So you can see all my wires here. So this is the dedicated 15 amp lighting circuit. So we got 14-2 wire. That's what all this white wire is. If you look down here, there's yellow wire. That's for the dedicated gear circuit. But let's go back to the white circuit, the lighting circuit. And you can see they go up. I made sure to drill back far enough so that, you want to make sure if you're going to put any screws in here that you're not going to go through your wires. So you don't want to move these holes too far forward. Because there's nothing on the backside because we already have drywall, I could have pushed those as far back as I wanted to, kind of like I did here. So to have a nice buffer, you'd have to sink some really long screws into that lumber, which I'm not going to do, obviously, because I know. But you can see the wires split off and they kind of run to their, respective circuits and whatever lights are connected to it. Those are the 4-inch smart lights that are fully, controllable. And then these are the two 6-inch, what I'm calling filming lights. Okay, so now up at the ceiling, we got the two filming lights right here. But you can see that round box that's up in the ceiling is actually the electrical box that you'd have your bedroom light or bedroom fan connected to. And all I did is I ran that wire down to my new electrical box where I'm tapping from. So the reason you would want to do this is to code and really people would even say it's like illegal to do. You cannot bury an electrical connection up somewhere where you can't access it. So I'm gonna cover all this lumber with fabric. If I left that electrical box up in the ceiling, you wouldn't be able to access it. And so by dropping that wire down to a new electrical box that's now flush with my new ceiling, my acoustic fabric ceiling, now I can access all those connections and it's just like the proper thing to do. Okay, so I did have to do a small little woodworking project for all of these thin LED recessed lights that I'm using in order to mount them into the ceiling and then still have the fabric wrapped around them. So what I did was I used for the 6-inch lights, I used a piece of 1x8 pine. And for the smaller 4-inch lights, I used 1x6 pine. You can see I just simply marked the center of it. Then I used a hole saw bit to drill out the proper size to be able to mount these lights in there. So after it's drilled out, you can clean up these edges a little bit if you wanted to run a router around it. You could do that, but we need this wood to be around the outside of the light so that you can staple the fabric to it so it's nice and tight. So this is what it looks like mounted in place. These are all the 4-inch lights, and the 6-inch are more towards the center of the room. Now, one thing I just do want to mention is you definitely don't want to put your insulation and bury that box at the very top when you put the insulation in. You want to leave a little room for some airflow. Now, this is the 6-inch lights. They're heavier, they're bigger pieces of wood, and because of that, I had to add a 1x2 piece of lumber to stop those pieces of wood from sagging and potentially wrinkling the fabric later on. Okay, so these are the little spotlights that I have that kind of like light up the studio desk. I have 6 of them. These are from Torchstar. These are not smart. They actually have a little remote, which I like because a lot of times I don't like to have to break out my phone just to change something. So these are the spotlights. These are the 4-inch downlights that I have. Now these will do the full white spectrum and they'll do the full color spectrum. These are smart. These require an app to be able to use, but I also have them hooked up to an Alexa so I can just tell her to turn them on and off. They are roughly just under a 1/2 inch thick. And then this is the power supply that comes with them so they can be powered. And then if you open up this little door, these are little connections in here so you can hardwire these. You can see here, I made this spotlight box. This box is going to shine right down my mixing console desk will be right here. And so they're all pointing right down on that. You can see they're all little 16 color type little spotlights that I have wired up. As part of, more of the ceiling lighting. And then the other holes that you see here, these are actually not for lights, those are for speakers. This is going to be my overhead speakers for Dolby Atmos. So there's gonna be a 6.5 inch speaker there and there, which is once again over the mix position. And these are the speakers. So this is only for like playback. I'm not mixing music on this, because I'm still not sure if I want to get into mixing Atmos. I don't know. But at least in the meantime, I can listen to stuff in Atmos. So I'm using all of these Polk audio speakers. I really like the sound of these. They sound super good. And these will just be everywhere in the studio. And the 2 like permanently mounted ones will be right above the mix position for that, like I said, the overhead Dolby speakers. Now the other thing I did is you can see this smoke alarm. So once again, that's the original box up there. I have a new box. Obviously it's not mounted yet. I just got done doing this. But I got to extend those wires a little bit and then mount the box. And this way it'll now be flush with my new ceiling because I'm dropping this down. And then, you know, obviously this will be exposed, which is what we want. So the other thing is this HVAC vent. So that is a 4 by 10 inch vent. Once again, I had to extend that, and you can see this wire right here is I'm putting a couple little cooling fans up in here. So it'll be inside of this wooden area. And that's so I can turn those on even after the AC isn't on. I was really like going back and forth whether I wanted to put a actual ceiling fan in here, but I just know what it's gonna do to the acoustics with having a fan constantly moving above your head. And so I'm just putting in a couple little cooling fans is really what they are. They're USB powered cooling fans for like, you could say it's for a computer. And it's pretty much right above where I'm gonna be sitting so that there's just a little bit of air, you know, just to kind of cool things down a little bit after the AC shuts off. Okay, so that's really it for the ceiling. So let me show you guys some of the other things that I did down here. So once again, if you see a yellow wire, that is a 20 amp circuit, and that means that that outlet is part of the gear circuit. So that's to plug in, you know, pieces of gear or whatever I want, but it really needs to be gear. And then I have some speaker wire here because if I back up, this is pretty much like the middle of the room. And so I would put a side surround sound speaker there. And then this is the original outlet of the room. Now there is no power in this outlet. It is 100% dead. And I need to find a way to cover these up, and I just haven't figured anything else out yet. And then one more wire down here. This is actually for some of the LEDs. The LED strip lights are gonna be kind of like lighting up the bottom of this cabinet that goes right here. But if you look, you know, I got my outlets up here, but then all the power runs down at the floor. They always say that power should crawl. I'm not doing anything special with, you know, wire and braiding all the cable together. It's just sitting right at the floor. And then my other wires are up probably 18 inches off the floor. Speaker wires, the LED wire. I don't have any signal cables on this side of the studio, so really nothing to bother. But you can see another outlet there. That's on the gear circuit. And then if we kind of keep coming over here, this is where it starts. This is where all the gear is gonna be. So got a lot of different outlets, a lot of cables coming in and out. So let me show you guys this. Okay, so first up, there's gonna be a big cabinet here with some studio gear in it. And that's what this yellow wire is for. It's actually gonna, you know, this wire will be inside the cabinet, but on the side, I will have an additional outlet, and that's why this is just sitting here, because it needs to be hooked up after I get my cabinet built. And then I have a bunch of wires in here. So first we have Ethernet, you know, to be able to run a solid wired connection. HDMI, which is is going to the back of the room. I'll show you guys that in a little bit. These blue wires, this is for more power wiring for LED strips. Got a nice coax cable for TV or an antenna or something if I need. And then I have 3 more Cat 6 wires that run throughout the studio. And then I'll talk about those in a minute. And then this is actually from my security system that's in a different room so I can see all my different cameras. So Cat 6, Cat 5 cable is fairly inexpensive, especially if you buy it in, I usually buy it in 500, 1,000 feet at a time. So I call these wires my like drinking wires. Used to be when I would go out at night with my friends, I'd have all these ideas like, oh man, if I had just ran a wire from this spot to this spot, I could have easily put in an additional whatever. So I like to run wires to just different parts of the studio where I think maybe one day I'll think of something and I'll already have wire there to do, you know, whatever I want to it. So I ran 3 separate Cat6 cables that don't have anything to do with the internet, just throughout the studio in spots where I think maybe in the future, if I wanted to put something there, some sort of controller or whatever, at least there'd be a wire there so I could more easily do it. Okay, so now back to the wiring. So this is the one outlet. I will put a different color wall plate over it because it has got the white wires on it, the 14.2, which is the lighting circuit. And this is for the Amazon Alexa. This is like the only special thing. So that outlet is kind of like separated from the rest. But if you look over here, this is my main 8 outlets. I did buy heavy duty. They will let you to put a 20 amp plug in it. I won't be using that, but a little bit more heavy duty. They just last a little longer. But these are the main 8 outlets that I'll be powering essentially all of my gear up with. So then moving on from there, we have all of the speaker wire for all the surround sound speakers. The speakers are in the back, the ceiling, things like that. None of the front speakers, all the front speakers will have their own dedicated wires. So then I have this cable I forgot to mention. So this is a mic cable that runs up and over and actually drops down over the center of the room where my mixing desk will be. So that's for when I'm filming and I want to have like a dialogue mic, you know, right out of the shot. There's a nice high quality, I think this is Megami or Canary cable. Megami. Nice high quality, you know, mic cable already ran up through the ceiling, and then there'll be an XLR connector right at the top of the ceiling so I can easily plug a mic into there. So it's out of the way and I don't have to run a cable down the sidewall or whatever. So this is one of those things that I wish I would have done in the last studio, and I remembered to do it on this one. Okay, and then the last out of this box is this 3.5 millimeter, it looks like a headphone end right now, but it actually runs to a place where I have all the central audio in the entire house so that I can actually like backfeed audio through this cable to the sound system so I can listen to, you know, maybe something I've been working on in the studio in the rest of the house. And then here is one more outlet. This is actually a switched outlet, and this is for some of the LEDs that are up front. So I can control this switch, its power, by the switches that are over by the main entry. And then last, definitely not least, is some actual, you know, this is like a snake cable that I cut up. So we got 8 connectors here, 4 run to one spot, 4 run to another. If we kind of follow this down, kind of wraps around the left side of the studio, comes back here, and then 4 of them end up right here. And this is where I'm gonna have my mobile recording mic preamps in a rack with wheels on it, so I can wheel it around because this room is definitely smaller and go in like the other parts of my house to record stuff. But, you know, if I am recording in here, at least I have 4 outputs that I can send to the front of the studio. And then the other 4 are over here. And I have this guy. This is a wall plate with 2 mic connections and then 2 headphone connections that'll go, you know, somewhere here and get connected to these wires. And then I'll have, you know, these connections in the back of the studio. So some of the things we skipped over, just another outlet, more wiring for LEDs. That's Storm, it's one of our dogs. We got another speaker wire for the side surround sound speakers. Another outlet back here, and then this is one of the spots where that Cat6 cable ends up. Because I'm gonna have, you know, preamps here, maybe I'll have some sort of, you know, preamp in the future that needs some sort of digital connection, and I got a Cat6 cable for that. And then just more 20 amp main gear power back here. And then here's that HDMI cable I was talking about. Let's see if we can focus. That's where it is. So this just runs from here. It goes up, it comes over, and it comes back down to here. And that's so I can, like, you know, if I needed let's say a monitor back here for whatever reason, there's already HDMI cable for it, you know, just to be able to hook it up in the future. I don't even think I'm probably gonna even use this at this point, but it's there. Also, in the very back of the room, in the middle, it's going to be next to some storage. There's more speaker wire for rear speakers. And these are actually kind of long and they'll come down. And then there's actually this cable. This is diffuser. Okay, so there's going to be a diffuser in the back here, kind of where the True Sound sign is. And I want to obviously illuminate that, and that'll be power for the LED strips. And then really kind of like the last part of the wiring is back here. So there's going to be a big cabinet back in this section, and so I have power just so I can run some chargers in there. There's a switched outlet that'll also be back here for some more lighting. And then we got another Cat 6 cable for those drinking wires I was telling you about. Under lighting and the HVAC fan. So that all comes back here and it'll have its own, kind of like power charging area. So for the most part, that is all the wiring for the studio. I can now get to the next stage where it's starting to put all the insulation in here and then start wrapping with fabric and doing all the other stuff. Couple things to note. Once again, I just want to remind you guys that I'm not putting drywall on here. These 2x4s are strictly here just to hold up insulation. And the reason I did the 2x4s over some thinner lumber is just because of the cost. This was $3 a board. It's the cheapest lumber I can get. And, it's strong so that I can hold up this ceiling structure. There's no drywall going in here, only insulation and fabric, which is the reason why I built it like this. Now, I did not do nearly as many audio snake cables running throughout the studio, mainly because all of the gear is really going to happen in the middle where the studio desk is, and then there's another rack towards the front of the studio. Really, I'm just trying to contain everything, keep short runs of cable. But I did have those eight snake cable connections in the back of the studio just in case I need them. It's not that far of a run to run these cables, but I had the snake cable, I bought it, I might as well use it. So last thing to point out is the existing outlets that were in the room from the start. Obviously, I killed all the power to it, took the outlet out, and then I just put a blank plate over the top of it. That's really all I did to seal it up. All right, guys, so for the most part, that is all the wiring. But more importantly, I will show you guys how I actually wired up the whole studio as far as, power for all the gear in both the spots, and then how I ran the signal cable and things like that. Probably things that might be a little bit more interesting to watch too. And then I'm also going to have another video where I kind of show like a block diagram of how everything is connected. How this summing mixer connects to this gear, goes to the SSL desk, how it goes back and forth, and really how all this stuff works together. That will be a totally separate wiring video, but that'll be more towards the end where our, the studio is done. Now, of course, the studio is done right now. I mean, let's be real. It's fully done. It's fully working. But at least when we get to that point in the filming stage. Now, just a couple of things I want to say. When you get into wiring up these outlets, the switches, the lights, technically you really should have a permit. Now, I do not love dealing with permits. It's never been like a fun situation, but it does give me the peace of mind that, number one, I did things to code. I wired it correctly, based on whatever code my county or town follows. And then also that, there is a record of it just in case something were to terribly happen and I'd have a fire that was caused from wiring. At least they would know that I pulled the permit, I did the correct thing. And so it'd just probably be a lot easier to deal with the insurance companies and whatever afterwards. Now, the other thing I want to mention is, you saw all this lumber that I, put up all over the studio. All that lumber is to house the insulation, which acts as my acoustic treatment for this entire room. So all that framing is holding up is going to be that fluffy fiberglass insulation. That is all it's holding up. And then after I put that insulation up, I'm going to cover it with fabric. I am not putting up drywall. That would be a very different framing that I would have to do. So when you guys see all that framing, just know that it's going to have all that fiberglass insulation in it. But also another reason why I like to build studios like this instead of doing your traditional, you make a box frame, you fill with insulation, you wrap it with fabric, and then you take that panel and you hang it on the wall like a traditional panel would, kind of like you would hang a picture up on the wall. I don't like that because all that space where I ran all those wires in, I would have to somehow find a way to, hide all that wiring. And by doing it the way that I did it, you have all that room to run all those wires in. And then you simply just, when it comes time to put up the insulation, you just run it right over the top of it. And it hides it all. And to me, it is just a much better method of doing acoustic treatment. Also, because I built it all out of 2x4s, if I want to hang anything on the walls, I know this is really, really strong. It's going to be able to support whatever I want. If I want to put monster monitors up on the walls someday, I know that's a possibility. That is it for at least wiring up the studio. The next video is going to be me going through and putting up all the insulation and then putting up all the first layer of fabric over all that fiberglass insulation that I'm going to put up. Now, once again, the video right before this, the framing video, shows how I did all this framing and the reasoning behind it all. And then also, I got a lot more videos coming up even after the installation. I'm going to show you guys how I literally built everything. I mean, I built the studio desk, the front cabinet, all the acoustic treatment everywhere. So you guys will see exactly how I did all of that. So guys, as usual, if you like this video, please like, comment, follow, do that whole thing. Share it with a friend who's, currently building a studio or maybe is thinking about building one in the future. So guys, really that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.